I see most of y'all are gathered here already. My presentation will be mostly about how to apply Kotlin to actual real-life problems. You've seen examples, you've seen code fragments, you can find lots of tutorials online, but how do you actually use Kotlin? I'll give you some small context about who am I, what are we doing in full contact with Kotlin, and stuff like that. Then I'll go to actually what we've learned, what can we tell you about how to use Kotlin, and draw some conclusions. So, I am Toms Kusiņš. I work on the full contact Android app. And we've been migrating to Kotlin for some time now. The goal for migration, there have been multiple. We made a goal to create a better UI for our app 3 months or so ago, and there have been many smaller sub-goals. We wanted to simplify development, make a better architecture, we wanted to refactor the whole thing, break it down and write it from the ground up. But you never have time for that. There are project schedules you have to meet and deadlines and stuff like that. So we set out to hit a small goal, make a new UI. And if anyone, how many of you have worked with Android actually? Wow, that's a lot. So you know that fragments are I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but fragments are crap. And we tried to get rid of fragments, so we introduced a new framework that gets rid of those as well, but that's not the point of my presentation. So we did a lot of stuff. That's my main point here. So what we did with Kotlin. Oops, there's some delay. We started with unit tests. And if you ever want to introduce Kotlin to your code base, I also suggest you start with something simple like unit tests. Because even if you do something stupid, those are just tests, right? Worst case scenario, they don't destroy your production app or don't even impact your beta testers. So there are some small steps on how to add Kotlin to your testing pipeline, but mostly you just follow the tutorial on their page and just adjust it a little bit here and there. The slides will be available somewhere. So we started with unit tests. We had 150 or something like that lines of Kotlin code, and we were yes, we have Kotlin. We're cool. We're hipster. So after unit tests, the next best point where to introduce Kotlin, in our opinion, what worked best for us was utility classes and data classes and small isolated parts. We started with a small UI component that we show at the bottom, small the tab buttons. When you switch between tabs in the UI, the buttons that switch between tabs. We rewrote those in Kotlin. And it worked okay. There were some problems here and there. We learned a lot of stuff. And we were up to 700 lines. That's something. That's a lot. We are professionals. But we thought it's been 2 months and we have written 700 lines of Kotlin. That one cut it. There's too much Java, too little Kotlin. So we made a rule. Every new file has to be Kotlin, or XML because it's Android. But if you want to write it in Java, don't write it in Kotlin. And if you modify an old file, substantially, more than 60%, rewrite it in Kotlin. We put that rule in place, and right now we are at 11,000 lines of Kotlin, something like that. That's a decent number. It's 20% or something like that. So how was the migration and what have we learned? The autoconvert tool, whenever you work in Android Studio or IntelliJ, the Kotlin plugin gives you a little item in context menu, convert this Java file to Kotlin code, and that autoconvert tool is actually pretty good. For simple classes and like small stuff, it's excellent. Just you don't have to rewrite code, just convert it and like adjust small stuff here and there. Like sometimes if you use a library called retro lambda, you can use like lambdas in Java 6, which is the Java that Android supports, sadly. And those lambdas often don't get converted properly, so you have to review those. But apart from that, it's good. Use the autoconvert tool. That's my first tip. And the autoconvert tool, really, it's if it doesn't know what to do, it seems to err on the side of caution. So, yeah, use it. Some stuff to watch out for. If you use a lot of annotations, the migration might be a little bit bumpy. So some annotations that we used or use are listed. Okay, first of all, Lombok. Lombok is an interesting thing. How many of you have used it? Oh, that's a lot. Nice. Lombok is a great tool if you're stuck with Java. But the way it works, it does some low-level bytecode manipulations, and it uses some internal Java APIs, and it's not compatible with a lot of stuff. So if you cannot use Lombok and Kotlin at the same time, basically. That's the short version of it. If you want to use a Lombok, say a Lombok getter from Kotlin code, you have to write the getter manually. Eventually that's really not a big problem, because eventually you will migrate the Lombok generated stuff to Kotlin anyways. Kotlin has this thing called data classes, which is like you add the word data before the class keyword, and it just does everything that Lombok does and better, without incompatibilities and plugin dependencies. Another thing is like the Android annotations, where you can annotate a resource or return value or something with, like, say, string res, and the Android, I'm not sure what part of the toolchain does it, but I think it's link that checks if it really is a string resource identifier, and those annotations in Kotlin, they just don't do anything. It's kind of sad, because it would be nice if they did something, but right now they don't do anything. I hope they fix it. I have added my thumbs up to that issue, and you can do too. So there are some other annotations that work fine, like event bus. I'm talking about Greenbot's event bus, not Google's, and Dagger 2. That also works just fine. We're using them quite extensively, and have not seen any differences between using them in Java and using them in Kotlin, and probably others, because those are not all the annotations that exist. So right now we're at 11,690 lines of Kotlin, which is 20.8% of our code base. We started with 150 in unit tests, which is pretty cool. We have like 60,000 lines of code in total, something like that, and I think we can. Well, yeah, I had a point and I forgot it. Anyways, some example. Sorry. I should not sleep with my window open. So here are some like small examples that took some time to figure out. Dagger dependency injection. It's a pretty popular dependency injection framework, and it takes some getting used to with how it interacts with Kotlin. Say, if you want to inject a variable with Kotlin and Dagger, it has to be late init and it has to be mutable. Otherwise, Dagger can't inject it. If you want to inject a constructor, which is the injection type that we use the most, you have to like add the constructor keyword and add the inject keyword to it, the inject annotation to it. And yeah, that's how you use Dagger with Kotlin. It's pretty simple, but until you figure out the exact placement of keywords and annotations and what goes where, because it goes a little bit different places in Java. Extending an Android view is a nice one because the JVM overloads annotation didn't exist at first, and then you had to like extend each individual constructor, and you had like 4 constructors, and it was a pain. But now you have the JVM overloads annotation, and you just have to add it to the constructor to extend an Android view. In case you're ever doing that in Kotlin, this is how you do it. There are some advanced ideas with properties and property delegates. That's some fun stuff. Sergey's already mentioned like lazy and observable delegates, where you define and this should be by, not an equals sign. If you define a variable with a delegate, you can do like all kinds of stuff with it, and say initialize only when it's accessed, or whenever it's accessed, say with the preferences. And if you ever want to do something funky, try delegates, and it's just fun. Even if it doesn't end up practical afterwards, it's like extremely fun. That's the main point I have for this slide. Because Sergey's already stole my string preference, and I can't tell you about it because he already told you. Extending a function interface is a cool idea. So you might have noticed that, and the few of you that have written Kotlin already, that if you ever try to extract a lambda as a variable and define its type, it will have a type something like this. So here are the parameters for that lambda, and here's the return value. And it's actually something that you can extend. You can extend a class from a lambda or functional interface. If you do that, and if you override the invoke method, you can use your class in some interesting ways. This is actually an object, not a function, not a method, and this calls that object's invoke method, and it works great. We use it for use cases. We use some like a variation of the clean architecture, and so our use cases, most of them extend a functional interface, some kind of it, and it's kind of cool that you can call them like, say, get user's use case and just parentheses, and it's working. If it returns an observable, you can chain it, and it's interesting. So those are just a few examples that I had gathered. In general, once you have migrated, just continue experimenting. Just think functional, because you kind of start using Kotlin for the null safety, but suddenly you write functional programming code. It just sneaks up on you. Embrace it, and use the standard library keywords like let, apply, and now the new ones also, and take if, and just make chains, and because chains are cool, and just have fun. It's really a fun language, If nothing else, then I've just had more fun writing Kotlin than Java. It's totally worth it. So, in conclusion, you can start with small things like unit tests, some separate components. If you start with unit tests, they don't really impact your production code at all. It's the best way you can test out the waters. Let's put it like that. And once you have gotten used to Kotlin, just start it like slowly introducing to your code base. And you do gain productivity from using Kotlin. We've seen it in practice. The amount of code you write and the quality of it is just better. There's no denying that. The only real caveat I can give you is annotations. If you have code that has lots and lots of custom annotations, take care and experiment.